Hello everyone and welcome to the Nerdivergent channel. I am your host Nerdivergent. Today we're taking a look at Spider-Man Brand New Day. Spoiler free of course. This movie comes on the heels of Spider-Man No Way Home, along with several other Marvel movie productions and TV shows that might not have performed as well as Marvel might have hoped. But Brand New Day seems to be a very different story. At the time of this recording, the movie has already passed $1.2 billion between its opening weekend and by the end of its first week, including international, of course. So, can Spider-Man Brand New Day keep up this incredible pace, or is this a bottle rocket that's going to burn bright, burn fast, and just disappear quickly? Well, let's get into it. Spider-Man Brand New Day stars Tom Holland, Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, John Bernthal, and Sadie Sink. And right off the bat, I've got to say something that might sound incredibly simple. This is a great story about Peter Parker. Yes, that's right, Peter Parker. This isn't a movie primarily concerned with introducing characters for future Marvel projects or using Spider-Man as a stepping stone into larger MCU storylines. Those characters are here, but they're supplemental. This story follows Peter, his struggles with being Spider-Man, the sacrifices he's made throughout the years protecting New York, and more importantly, the personal sacrifices he's made as Peter Parker. And this story is showing us how they're not only going to give us the question, but how Peter is going to answer it with all of his trials that are laid out before him. The movie establishes that distinction very well. We understand the difference between the hero Peter believes he needs to be and the man he wishes he could allow himself to become. And that's really the heart of this movie. The film doesn't waste much time establishing the timeline or filling in what's happened since Spider-Man No Way Home. Instead, we're given a very cool sequence showing members of Spider-Man's rogues gallery that he's apparently encountered and put away over the intervening years. By the time we reach the present, we get a pretty good picture of the life Peter has built for himself. We see where he's living his relationship with the police, the people he's regularly in contact with, and just how completely he's dedicated himself to being Spider-Man. If somebody needs Spider-Man, he's there. But that dedication has taken an enormous toll on Peter Parker. He's still following the lives of his friends who no longer remember him. Social media has become his only remaining connection to them. He wants to know they're okay and still be part of their lives, even if he only watches from a distance. And yet, Peter deliberately keeps himself away. Is he protecting them? Is he protecting himself? Would they reject him if he approached them? Could they ever remember him? Those are questions Peter doesn't really know how to answer. That self-sacrifice might be admirable when we're talking about the symbol of Spider-Man, but for the man underneath the mask, it's destroying him. When I say this movie is about Peter Parker, I really mean it. His loneliness, his pain, and his sacrifices have slowly collapsed into depression. Peter has essentially stopped allowing himself to live because he's terrified of what might happen if he does. And the movie foreshadows these consequences of that choice several times. I'm not going any further into that because we're entering spoiler territory, but just know that if you're going to see this movie, there are things established very early that eventually have some very satisfying payoffs by the end. Another character we meet fairly early, and someone who becomes very important to both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, is the Punisher. Spider-Man and Punisher have plenty of interactions throughout the comics, and while Punisher wasn't exactly a regular presence in the 90s animated Spider-Man series, he did make an appearance. Here, their relationship feels like somebody pulled the two of them straight out of the comic book pages. Their personalities immediately clash, and it's great. Peter has also, apparently, picked up a little bit of Captain America's attitude about language. There are several interactions between Spider-Man and Punisher that are pure gold. They're funny without turning either character into a joke, and there's something strangely lovable about Peter still trying to maintain that moral standard. It feels like Peter has taken something from the example of Captain America once set for him and incorporated into his kind of hero that he wants to be. But at the same time, the Spider-Man Punisher dynamic is a very direct callback to the comics. Their first major encounter comes when Spider-Man swings into action against an armored personnel carrier barreling through New York City towards the Department of Damage Control. And this thing isn't exactly subtle. It's an APC with the .50 caliber turret on the top. Spider-Man managed to disable its weapons, but he can't stop the vehicle from tearing through the city. Then his spider sense goes off, and an RPG knocks him right off the vehicle. Enter the Punisher. The two immediately start bickering like an old married couple over Frank's incredibly heavy-handed and incredibly dangerous methods. The comedy works surprisingly well, but it fits both characters. While the action eventually forces Punisher to abandon the pursuit and leave Spider-Man continuing the chase on his own, and my favorite little touch, Spider-Man webs Punisher's mouth shut to stop him from swearing before swinging away. That's Spider-Man. Eventually, despite a pretty heroic effort, Spider-Man can't prevent the APC from crashing into damage control. But then he discovers something really bizarre. The person driving this armored vehicle and shooting her way through New York City is a 60-year-old woman. Peter barely has time to process that before realizing she's not actually responsible for what she's doing. Someone, or dare I say it, something, is controlling her. And worse, whatever is controlling her can jump from one person to another. Peter catches on quickly. He can actually sense the presence of whatever is invading these people's minds. At the same time, Scorpion is being escorted to the roof for transport by helicopter to a Supermax facility. But that same mysterious force manages to interfere with the helicopter and divert it. Now Peter has a real mystery on his hands. Who is doing this? How are they doing it? And why? Even when Peter tries explaining everything that's happened to Detective DeWolf, he doesn't really have any answers yet and is stumbling to even explain it. So Peter begins an investigation with what kind of technology, technique, or metahuman ability could possibly accomplish something like this. That investigation eventually puts him in contact with the replacement Black Widow, hoping she might know someone capable of pulling off this puppeteering. We'll call this faceless enemy the Puppet Master for this video. This is also where the movie starts to show us the physical toll Peter's lifestyle has taken on him, and I think that's intentional. Peter has become so obsessed with being Spider-Man because he's willing to get the job done at practically any cost. He's taking care of New York City. He's taking care of everyone else, but he's not taking care of himself. Even Detective DeWolf notices it. Replacement Black Widow does manage to give him a lead involving searches performed on secure servers by multiple people. It's not much, but enough to give Peter somewhere to start looking. And that eventually brings Peter across someone he hasn't really stopped thinking about. Ned. Peter spots Ned inside a bodega picking up supplies for a party at his apartment. Peter follows him and eventually enters the party, where he sees Ned's Spider-Man wall of possibilities. And then he sees MJ. Seeing his old friends again is already difficult, but then Peter realizes MJ is involved with another man. You can see what that does to him. Peter doesn't make a scene. He doesn't interfere. The emotion is written clearly on his face as he leaves. By this point, all of those little pieces the movie has been quietly dropping in front of us begin to coalesce. That's something Brand New Day does surprisingly well. very little feels wasted. This is roughly where I'd say the movie enters the second act. And it's also where I'm going to start pulling back because I don't want to give away the major story developments. But there is one thing I need to talk about. Bruce Banner and the Hulk. Hear me out. Generally speaking, I don't like what they've done with him here. Actually, this may be my biggest problem with the movie. What bothers me isn't simply that they've changed Bruce. Characters should change. It's that his progression feels like regression. Bruce has once again become someone who views the Hulk primarily as an enemy that needs to be controlled. Narratively, I think that's a terrible direction for the character. For years, Bruce Banner's story has been about learning to live with the other part of himself, facing it, understanding it, learning from it, and eventually finding some kind of balance. Here, the answer seems to have become control it. And that's especially strange considering what the villain of this movie is doing. There's an interesting thematic parallel here. Control versus acceptance. But I'm not convinced the movie realizes just how contradictory Bruce's position becomes. Instead of compassion, understanding, and learning how these two sides can coexist within their own nature, we're once again treating Hulk primarily as something Banner needs to contain, until somebody needs a weapon, and then suddenly everybody needs the Hulk. I find that genuinely disappointing. Not just for Bruce Banner and the Hulk as characters, but for what it potentially means for the larger Marvel universe. This kind of control is made by fear and hatred. Does the MCU want to become so negative and hateful? Good Lord, I hope not. But it's there, and I can't unsee it. I wouldn't call it an overtly political message, but there are undertones to that idea that one of the Earth's most powerful protectors has decided that part of himself must simply be controlled and suppressed. And this is Earth 616 after all, not Earth 9811. And yes, I had to look that up. I couldn't remember which universe that took place in. As for the character I've been calling the Puppet Master throughout this review, that was probably the biggest surprise of the movie for me, and a very welcome one. I'm definitely not spoiling that reveal here, but what I will say is that it doesn't feel like something pulled completely out of nowhere. It fits within Spider-Man's universe and lore. And that was awesome. Ultimately, Spider-Man Brand New Day succeeds because it remembers something incredibly important. Spider-Man movies need to be about Peter Parker and his development as Spider-Man. This movie doesn't feel desperate to connect itself to every other corner of the Marvel Universe. It doesn't allow Peter's story to become swallowed by bigger characters simply because those characters happen to exist. Peter is at the center of this movie. And he should be. That said, there are two characters I don't think this movie really needed. The Hulk and replacement Black Widow. They're fine. They don't ruin the movie. I just don't think either one is particularly necessary. In fact, I think the Hulk's role could have been filled by Dr. Connors and accomplished many of the exact same story elements while keeping everything firmly rooted within Spider-Man's own world. But those complications don't outweigh what the movie gets right. It gives us Spider-Man. More importantly, it gives us Peter Parker. Would I recommend it? For sure. I give Spider-Man Brand New Day a 7 out of 10. I would recommend seeing it in theaters because you'll focus on the movie more, catching those blink and you'll miss moments. The movie receipts has been going down steadily over the last week, but by Thursday night, they've made over $500 million domestically. But what do you think? And while we're talking Spider-Man, who's your favorite? For me, I still have to go with Tobey Maguire. But wow! Tom Holland is certainly embracing and pulling off the comic book and 90s TV show joking version of Spider-Man, and it is hair's breadth competition to making him my new favorite. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, would you please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell? Every bit of support helps me get closer to 100 subscribers. And don't forget my gaming channel, Nerdivergent 199 Gaming, here on YouTube. There's a link down in the description. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you at the next one. Take care.